we delayed today's recording of the podcast because Charlie had embarked on what happened? Did you have some old bananas? Is this like, was it you started with old bananas and decided to make banana bread?
Baking on a Saturday. Yep. It's becoming something of a regular thing now. Mainly is like an activity for Iona, but mostly because I love eating baked goods. And, I don't have many vices these days, Will, but once I realized that, baking's not that hard and it tastes fucking amazing. And I've got an excuse now because there's an arts and crafts component in the making of the thing. And then Jem doesn't really have a sweet tooth, and Iona is only little and doesn't have a particularly sweet tooth. So I get to eat the spoils. Mm-hmm. Like, to the spoils go the victor. And in this case, I am Victor. Victor Pie Eater, call me, please.
I mean, I think the expression might be to the victor go the spoils rather than to the spoils go the victor. But I understand the point you're trying to make.
Victor was dyslexic. That's what people don't understand.
Yeah, and
when he came up with that saying.
Exactly. He was great at saying. He's not great at ordering them. People would sort it out later. Yoda's not great at it either, but one of the wisest people of all time. Exactly.
So I've actually been running through a whole gamut of, so it started off, we've also been getting these veggie boxes from this local farm. So getting some super fresh veggies.
So like a weekly veggie box sort of deal? Yeah.
And often you don't get to sort of pick what's in it. They just, whatever in season is what you get. So it's getting a lot of...
You're getting what we fucking send you. And then you deal with that.
Hey, city boy.
Yeah. This is what we grew this week, mate.
Yeah.
If you want strawberries, you have to fly them in from China. I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah,
this is what you're working with. Here's your mystery box.
I just drive out to a farm and it's just a box of vegetables just on the side. It just says, eat it! Exclamation mark. Eat it, city boy.
Deal with it.
Yeah. So I was getting a lot of rhubarb initially, and so I was like, I don't know what to do with rhubarb apart from make apple rhubarb crumble. So that's where it started.
Rhubarb feels to me like one of those things that was only invented for actors to say in the background of scenes to pretend that they were actually saying things. Like, it doesn't actually, it is only that, isn't it? Like,
I can't, I
we've gone out of our way to fucking include rhubarb is what I'm hearing.
Like, you have a farm where you grow rhubarb. Like, seriously, how big is that market?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to find out something about rhubarb. Let's find out. Rhubarb. What is rhubarb? Is fleshy edible stalks.
Oh, yeah. Hot. So hot. I got a fleshy edible stalk right here for you. You know what I'm saying?
That's how you make a baby. You get a fleshy edible stalk.
Rhubarb, rhubarb, rhubarb. What's the noise you hear coming from my bedroom?
Oh, my God. It's cooked and used for food. A lot of very fancy words here that aren't going to get us any closer to finding out actually what it is. The large triangular leaves contain high levels of oxalic acid and anthroglycosides, making them inedible. So, you could make a pretty good argument the entire fucking thing's inedible. But the leaves are definitely inedible. We could not find any recipe that we could whack the leaves in.
Yeah.
The stalks, let's see. Where do they come from? The precise origin of culinary rhubarb is unknown. No one wants to admit to it.
Because some fuckhead had to eat that leaf and then get through that part to get to the fleshy stalk.
They were grown in the 18th century. They go back to the 18th century and originally used for medicine. That makes a lot more sense. It tastes medicinal, rhubarb, right?
Yeah.
By the early 18th century, there was a new hybrid being grown in England and Scandinavia. The culinary rhubarb was developed. So they've actually, it was inedible, and they've just gone, we've got to get down to the lab with a pen and a pad, and we've got to fucking work out a recipe.
Try to get this damn rhubarb up.
We've just got to work out how to eat this shit. So they've open pollinated seeds, so its precise origin is impossible to determine. So they don't know how they made it. Yeah. They barely know how to cook it. Although rhubarb is a vegetable, it's often put to the same culinary uses as fruits.
Yeah.
The leaf stalks can be used raw, like celery, but are most commonly cooked with sugar and used in pies, crumbles, and other desserts.
Yeah, okay. So I actually did, because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, rhubarb. I don't think I've ever eaten one of these, not in a crumble. And so I ate a raw one, and I do not recommend.
No.
Like, it is like, yeah, you can eat it like celery, but it tastes nothing like anything good. It just it's got a very sort of, it doesn't have as crisp a consistency as celery. It's a bit chewier, and definitely just, it's not sweet or anything. You can see actually why you put it with apple, because apple is super sweet.
By the way,
and it
when your
offsets.
review is not as good as celery.
So I looked up the top 10 rhubarb recipes, and they all look disgusting. I mean, there's rhubarb custard bars is the first thing they suggest. There's rhubarb crumble. There's rhubarb jam, which looks actually okay. Rhubarb scones looks no good. Strawberry rhubarb cream. Like, what I'm getting from this is you put rhubarb with something that's actually good.
Good. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll basically.
It's the Andrew Ridgeley of root vegetables. Put it with someone talented, you'll get something amazing.
Yeah, but much like Wham and George Michael's solo career, what you find is once you get rid of the dead weight, you blossom into who you're really meant to be. That's what I always thought, because my nan was a rhubarb. That's what I associated with. Nan would make rhubarb, and it would all be, yes, these sweetened versions of desserts.
Lots of sugar.
But my memories would be, yes, you have to serve this thing with so many bad things to make it edible. Wouldn't we be better just to eat the bad things and not, like, unless rhubarb has some special power that, like, if you eat rhubarb, you'll live for another 10 years. But, like, it doesn't even seem to have a heap of, like, benefits that you can't get with any other food.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it is the straight man of the dessert world. You know, like, you've got if every sweet thing is Jerry Lewis, rhubarb is definitely. Oh, but then again, Dean Martin had his own kind of charm, didn't he? Like,
yeah, Dean Martin was at base level celery. Like, well, I mean,
what would it be then if they're in terms of, like, great duos? Has there ever been a duo where one is like just the super talented, fun one, and like that's. Like, I'm thinking Penn and Teller, like, Teller's meant to be the mute, but he's still got his own charm. So it's not like, is there anything?
No, I feel like, I know it's
being great,
I know
one person just being bland.
I mean, I'd love the idea that if one of the guys in Daft Punk was doing nothing, but no one could tell which one it is.
Well, originally we thought with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, like Ben Affleck was the rhubarb and Matt Damon was the apple, but then we worked out they're both pretty appley.
What about Seth Rogen and James Franco? Is James Franco? No, because he was still, like, I mean,
he's got his own charms.
Yeah, no, that would be like if
for a horrible potential alleged abuser.
If rhubarb started, like, feeling people up and mistreating them, then I guess no. It's more like, because rhubarb is only good when there's something like, I mean, is rhubarb? I guess we're talking about a duo here. But realistically, what I think rhubarb is like the Joey Fatone or the, like, you know, in a boy band or in a, like, K-pop outfit.
I think I know a bit about boy bands.
They always
you're talking to the right guy.
They're throwing in one for the girl who isn't into the hot one. Like, you know,
or it's the brother of the lead singer.
He's my favorite, though. Like, for the audience's point of view, that one is like, I identify with that one because I'm not the popular girl or popular boy. Like, there's one in the band that I can identify with. I think rhubarb feels more like that.
Yeah, I agree. So rhubarb and apple crumbles where it started, which is surprisingly healthy. Like, there's only about, I think, 3, maybe 2 tablespoons of sugar are used in total, and a bit of butter. But I think
of sweetness from the apples, though. So that's
lots of sweetness from the apples. Butter doesn't count. And then so then I thought, and then Iona, she wasn't impressed with the apple crumble. She didn't like the consistency of the crumble, and she wanted an apple pie. And I was like, shit, I've never made a pie from scratch. But and Jem's gluten-free, so that's the other challenge, is these desserts have to be gluten-free as well. So I made a gluten-free apple pie, which I really enjoyed, but the pastry process I found quite stressful, like keeping that consistency with the pastry and rolling it out and trying to build the pie in the pan. I don't know if I had I did everything to the letter of the recipe, but it felt like I didn't have enough pastry, and I was trying to stretch this pastry over the pie, and I got really fucking angry. Like, I had one of those moments of just kind of like, grumpy old man Charlie, whereas I was in the kitchen while they were out the backyard playing or something, and I was swearing my head off because I couldn't get the top layer of pastry to cover the pie. It kept sort of splitting apart, and I'd take it off and roll it into a ball and then roll it out with a pin and then try and get it back on. And then I watched a YouTube video where it's like, well, you roll the pastry onto the pin and then you unroll it off the pin across the top.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get that fucking going either. And so in the end, in a real impetulant kind of like moment, I just fucking whacked down the pastry and, it was just glibs and globs all over the top of the apples, and whacked it in the oven, and then went out and declared to my family, who had shown no interest at this moment, that the apple pie is going to suck. Everybody, just letting you know now, it's a disaster. I've just wasted the last 2 hours.
The thing that you probably had forgotten that I was doing. You thought I'd gone in and watched football or something. And you're like, where's Dad? Haven't seen him. It's okay. It's going to be no good. I mean, nothing. That is part of the baking process. As somebody who, has done more baking than they've done regular cooking in my life, I will say that part of the baking process, because baking is so precise and you can fuck it up at pretty much every level of, what's going on when it comes to baking. You throw your hands up in the air so often, and it's so hard to hide your fuck ups when you're baking. Like when you're cooking other foods, it's just so much easier to fix it up. But in baking, it's like you have to see and eat your fuck ups.
I'm not a good find. Look at my fingers. Look at these hands.
I mean, you don't have the fingers for it. You should.
I'm not a fine details kind of guy. So
probably needed to look up a special recipe for people with short fingers.
Yeah, I'm not crimping the edges of a fucking pie. Or doing anything. I can't do it. And I also I don't have
that way.
I don't have the eye for it. I'm not a visual person aesthetically. No. Having said all that, when I brought the pie out of the oven, that kind of hodgepodge of angry tossing of the top layer of pastry.
Once the pastry baked, bit of a pattern, right?
Yeah. A pattern, like a crisscross kind of pattern.
And you know how
she's like, this looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks good, right?
Yeah.
And it looks a bit like homemade, and it looks like the sort of thing that you would see in some fancy restaurant where they're like, no, it's our restaurant version of an old school, reminds you of when you were growing up apple pie.
This is like an authentic 1880s recipe from,
and the reason it reminds you of that is it's really fucking hard, and most of our parents threw the shit on top and splashed it everywhere and yelled at us that the pie was going to suck. And then 2 hours later, we were all like, actually, this is pretty good, to be honest.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.